Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Excellence Cartel. We are joined today with Laurin Conlin. Today's topic is refeeds as we continue to work ourselves through the quarantine time, aka, as I like to say, lockdown. So, with that being said, Sue, how are you hanging up there in Massachusetts? That area has ass kicked, hasn't it?
Why are you so quiet, Jeff? Why are you talking like that?
That was a sexy voice, dude.
Yeah. Like, you know how Blue Steel has a fucking look? That was like my Blue Steel voice. Like,
all right. Well,
you didn't
I
get
hope
it?
that comes through on the recording.
yeah, I hope so too.
Man, it's been more the same for me. I think people up here are now just getting a little stir crazy. We're just complaining about there are New Yorkers that are flooding, migrating out of New York City and going to the Cape because a lot of them have summer homes there. And so now it's an us versus them. The people on the Cape don't like the fact that these New Yorkers are there. So they actually have
bringing their germs.
Guard. They're the fucking National Guard in Rhode Island hunting down license plates with New York plates.
Wow.
And it's crazy because these people pay taxes. These are they have homes there.
Yeah.
So you have every right to go there. You've been paying the fucking taxes, and so it's just nuts. It's like the rich versus the poor, the Cape Codders versus the people who live in New York. It's just nuts. But you know what, man? I'm still controlling what I can. I was texting you guys. I'm still doing my cardio every morning. I still have all my food. I'm training out in a garage that my buddy has. He has a power rack, dumbbells, benches, everything. I had a great chest workout the other day.
You got plenty of what you need. I've seen.
I got plenty. I'm going to be doing German volume training legs tomorrow.
Yep.
And a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm doing all right, Jeff. I'm staying positive. I lost 3 clients, but they lost their jobs. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Jason, Papa, how are you doing? How's the last 7 days been for you?
It's been a good 7 days. As far as business goes, numbers on New Ethics are amazing. I think a lot of people are still kind of putting some money towards their health, apparently. I've been contacted a lot by people who want to go ahead and look at blood work and kind of go ahead and fix some things up that I think maybe shows were kind of preventing them from doing. So I've signed probably 12 people since all this lockdown stuff kind of went. So things are kind of really pretty good on my end. My gym is a 24-hour. And although they close gyms in Kentucky, this gym never literally has more than 5 people at a time in the gym. So the owner just said, I'm going to leave the key fob open. You guys can come and go as you want. Well, unfortunately, I was there yesterday, and a government agent, some jackass must have tattled. So some government agent was there with a badge, and Tony made us all leave. And now we're just going to do kind of you got to get in there before 9 or you got to go after 5. And then we'll just see. And he said if he gets another warning, he's just going to shut it down. I came home and did bands. I like bands, man. I got those Elite FTS. I got a shit ton of them. The tensions are great. I can flex the hell out of with those things. And my pump was amazing. I posted a pic in my stories. I don't really think I'm going to miss a beat, whether I have to train at home or my gym stays open. I just don't really even worry about it. I'll figure it out. It's kind of how I look at it. So all in all, things are pretty solid. And, I'm not that stir crazy. I go out on the weekends, but during the week, I literally help my clients and train. And that's usually about most of my days. And then, run my kids ragged, and I don't have to run them anywhere. So that's been nice. So, this is kind of like a little vacation for me, really. So everything's all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, man. Not a lot's changed. I've signed up 3 or 4 clients, gut health, hormones, people wanting to work on that. So I actually had one who was overweight and just wanted to get in better health because they were like, this is a little bit of a wake up call to them.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So besides the gym being closed to what I presume now to the 14th, because the governor of Tennessee came out yesterday and gave a stay-at-home order for the state finally. But people, I'm still going to my gym.
Wait, you think you'll be up to open your gym April 14th?
Well, that's when the order ends. So Trump's order is through the end of the month for social distancing.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's letting the governors do their own thing because he said openly that you've got what goes on in New York isn't going to be the same that goes on in Mississippi. Is the theory, right?
Kentucky has 304 cases out of 4.5 million. That's 0.00006%. I have a better chance of dying getting in my car every day, literally.
Yo, Jeff, speaking of that, I literally just got a notification. in Massachusetts, our governor, Charlie Baker, has extended the stay-at-home advisory and non-essential businesses stay closed until May 4th.
Oh, fuck.
Yep.
Oh, dude, I think
And
this is going all the way through the end of May, man.
You know, this is going to now be in New York. It's going to be in California, and then it's going to spread to the other states too. But it's always the cities that
Nah, I don't think Kentucky will do a lockdown to the 4th.
Dude, so here's the thing. It's got a 10% reoccurrence rate. And so I'm like, so we're basically going to lock down the whole country, shutter an entire economy over it. And then if one asshole gets hit and just coughs again, or, you know, the transmittance they think is more fecal matter, which is like disgusting, basically, if you really think about that. I've been reading up a lot on it. But you've got, if 10% reoccurrence, it could, you know, just because you beat it one time don't mean you're going to get that shit again.
People just have to stop eating ass on Tinder.
Yeah, no doubt. But you got what they say, 60% of a population has to get the immunity before it's like declared immune.
Oh, really?
That society is to it or something like that. There's a percentage to it, but I'm not saying we open April 14th, 15th, but what I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around is like in your situation with your gym, I've got 9,000 square feet and I'm lucky if I have 75 people spread out over 9,000 square feet at a given time because I'm a 24-hour facility, right?
Right.
And there's like lots of space between everyone. So I'm like, why can't I go back to business and you give me cleaning standards? Like, these are the products we need to use. This is how you clean your gym. This needs to be done. Send out the health inspectors. You got the, you know, and so forth. And then you've got to keep it below a certain occupancy. Why can't they let some of us do that? It's like you just killed all the sheep. So me being a debt-free company, now I have to like look at entertaining a loan just to make sure if this, because I think it goes through May. My gut says that they hold this shit all the way through May. Like, you're going to see, because everyone leaving New York, everyone leaving California, people fleeing Florida, like Louisiana, they're going to go to Kentucky. And I can tell you that because when Katrina happened, Nashville
no one comes to Kentucky, man.
Well, you know what?
that's why we have 300 cases. We don't leave, and no one comes here.
Yeah, okay. Actually, that's a good point. You're right.
That's why West Virginia had like 2 for like ever.
Yeah, no shit. But I will say this, the whole thing has me now going, you know, I'm really mad about China. And I just want someone at the top to put their pants on and say, this country lied and fucked us. So we are pretty much fucked by them. And there has to be some kind of like accountability.
I want Trump just go burn all those markets where they torture dogs and shit anyways.
I just, you know, I want to simply say, until you guys fix a few things about how y'all do business, like, negative, we're just not going to do shit with you. And then I'm starting to like look about buying everything American. Like, I've been like researching that, like products I'm interested in. Like, I'm just going to buy straight American now. I'd just rather pay the cost. I'm not fueling that bullshit.
You know, they open the markets back up, Jeff. They closed them for a little bit.
Yeah, they open them back up. They don't give a fuck.
Right back up.
That's why I said that, Jeff. Yeah, they're back open.
They don't give 2 fucks over there. And I'm to the point now where I'm just like, fuck them. I just want someone to come out and say it. And just publicly say,
I feel like Trump has kind of said that, and then people, he's such a xenophobe, and it's like, listen, I'm not saying the guy's perfect by any means, but like, I think there is a benefit to doing, you know, American business, made in America stuff, and any kind of company that I can try and support like that, I try and do, just because I think it is important, and it is harder. You know what I mean? Like, there's no doubt about it. And I understand why companies want to outsource, but there are a lot of benefits, I think, of doing it here. And there's actually really cool, like, you guys know I do jujitsu now, and I'm not like good at it, but I have to buy like gear and stuff, right? So anybody who doesn't know, it's called a gi. It's like this little outfit that you have to wear.
Yeah, I know it is.
So there's this company, it's called Origin, and basically they've brought back, I guess Maine used to be like a big manufacturing place, and it got completely just like ravaged like years ago, and like just everything shut down. So basically this guy has restarted like all the manufacturing. So they started with gis, they also do like supplements, and then now they've gotten into like jeans and boots and whatever. So they're trying to like really just like reestablish like American made stuff. So anytime I can try and buy stuff from them, I do, you know. And it's like, yeah, they're the most expensive gis, but I think it's cool that they make everything here. Like, they literally grow the cotton here. Everything is here. So it's like, you know, you have to sometimes put money in certain situations to, you know, help stuff. And especially now, like, I mean, the biggest thing I'm worried about is obviously the economy in this whole situation, you know, and that's obvious. And it just sucks because there's so many people who, you know, like, we're in a service industry in like some kind of a capacity, but like some people are like literally in an industry that straight up service that only matters if people are there. Like and all of those businesses. I mean, we've had to cancel stuff. I had to cancel 6 trips in 8 weeks. All of those things would have been, I'm flying, I'm staying at hotels, Airbnbs, Ubers, food, like everything, and it's like, I enjoy doing those things and I don't mind spending the money because that supports everything. And now it's just like, man, like it's just so strange.
It's a nightmare. I mean, how many jobs have been lost when you start comparing to like Great Depression numbers and different things. And you're just like, I think that's what Trump was saying is, look, we got to get back to work. It's like, we got to watch. There's hotbeds. We got to protect them and support them, but we got to start getting the rest of the country back. So Jeff, as a business owner who has people you need and come in your doors, I hope 14th works for you, man.
I do too, man. But my gut says there's shit's.
You haven't had it, but like you've got such a good family atmosphere. You haven't had many people try to pull I want my membership canceled right now.
Well, tomorrow my membership's run, so I'll be able to give you that update next week.
I mean, that's just where it gets shitty. It's like, dude, if you love this place, $30 ain't gonna kill you, or 50, whatever you charge. I know you charge a little more for the atmosphere, but still, I hope people aren't doing that.
No, I mean, I think we've had a few, but they were like musicians and service people, which here in Nashville just got completely decimated.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have any money coming in.
I mean, if you really think about it, dude, sporting events, movie theaters, bars, that just concerts, that just changed. You're not going to go, people aren't going to go and stand shoulder to shoulder anymore. I think everything just got flipped upside down for a very long time. Because I'm like, man, it gives me the heat. I'm just sitting there picturing going to a University of Tennessee football game this year, and you're just crunched in there, 102 sweating on each other.
People sneezing, coughing.
People sneezing, coughing, the whole lot.
Not washing their hands, stir up the bathroom.
Yeah. So, but anyway.
But anyways, we could go on forever. Let's move it on down the road.
But Laurin, how's your last 7 days been?
Well, it's been 14 here. I've been strictly following the procedures because literally, like, we went out for my birthday the day before. We went out on Sunday, and then I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden Monday hit, and it was like coronavirus, everything shut down. So Ryan is a firefighter, so I have been doing as much distancing and literally not going anywhere just because of that. Like, because if he does come home and he does have something, like, we won't know. So I'm trying to limit my exposure to really anybody. So luckily we have a full garage gym. He's been prepping for this forever. Any power lifter pretty much knows, like, we literally have, I mean, it's almost better than some gyms equipment, so we're set from the training perspective. And then I do have one of my coaches who lives here. She's training here as well but that's literally it. Like, that's the only interaction that I have. And you guys know I am so extroverted. And like I mentioned before, like, I travel multiple times a month. So like my life as far as like coaching and client work hasn't changed, but just like, hey, like, I'm traveling this week, or I'm going to jiu-jitsu, or I just started leasing an office, like, and then that's gone, obviously. So there's just a lot of things that have changed. Like, just, you just take things for granted. Like, hey, I'm going to go work at a coffee shop for 3 hours. And, I can't go do that, So it's been interesting. But like I said, I'm trying to really do my part. And as much as I wanted to be doing stuff as much as anybody else, I'm not like, oh, hey, there's not that many people at the beach, let me go. Like, no, first of all, I don't go to the beach, obviously. But that's pretty clear. But, people, like, I've had friends say that. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, let's just not do that. And then maybe we wouldn't have to be worrying about this. But it's a weird situation, and I'm just happy that, all of us can still do our jobs, not the traveling portion and the speaking portion, but we can do, working with clients. And this has been a really interesting time for them, and I'm glad that we can still support them, because if they didn't have, honestly, I know that I've needed support from people, and I know that they need support from, us as their respective coaches, because it is a tough time, and there are a lot of changes that people are going through, especially if you have families. Now parents are all of a sudden homeschooling. They might still be, they have to work at home. Like, there's a lot of different things going on. So I'm just really happy that we do have the ability to still coach people from our house and our office and do that. So yeah, I'm hanging.
I have a question for you.
I might get a volleyball and, draw a face on it soon and talk to it.
Did you talk to your landlord about that lease though?
So because it's a co-working space, it's not really like a landlord. It's just like a company.
Mm-hmm. Nah, she froze.
It's not. So, so I think that did I freeze? Sorry.
Yeah, you froze.
Okay, sorry. I said because it's like a co-working space. There's not necessarily like a landlord. It's just kind of like a company. And I am still allowed to go. Like it's not closed down. So you can go on your own terms, key card access, etc. So I think that's how they're going to, charge people, because there's really they can say, oh, you can go. Like you can easily go. Yeah. So it's kind of like the decision that I'm making to work at home. And again, I could, there's probably nobody there, so I could easily go and be fully socially distanced. But again, it's like, do I want to risk harming other people and just eat 2 months of rent, so
yeah,
gotta kind of do that.
That's what I'm looking at with my gym. I was curious if your landlord, if you had talked to your landlord about that or not. But with that being said, let's jump into this. So we're going to talk about refeeds after we took a little bit of a COVID-19 turn. Laurin, this is like your jam. You just love this stuff. So I'm going to kick it off to you real quick. What's the latest research showing about refeeds? Because it's come a long way over the past couple of years, what they were to what they are now.
Yes, certainly there's been a lot of changes as far as, coaches implementing refeeds. I think before, a few years ago, this would have been like, you're doing what? Like, oh, are you just lazy? You can't diet hard enough. And now we're looking at it more as a tool that can actually be effective for our clients. So where I did my research as a graduate student at USF, Dr. Bill Campbell's lab, they actually just published a study on the exact protocol that myself and many coaches use. Obviously, Jason, you know about this because of Gorman. And so it's we actually just did a refeed study and a diet break study. So we have that coming out soon as well. And the cool thing about Dr. Campbell's lab is that a lot of times when you're reading research, it's not as pinpointed to what we would want, right? But he talks to myself and other coaches on a weekly basis. And that's how we actually formulate the research. Hey, what are you guys doing in the trenches as coaches? We want to research this. So we take people who are normal weight individuals trying to get leaner. So it's not an obese population dieting down. These are people who are resistance training. These are people who are tracking their food. Every one of Dr. Campbell's studies now has somebody, if there's training involved, which there typically always is, they have basically like a trainer with them. They have a training program, and then there is somebody there supervising them the entire time. And then they have a nutrition coach as well. So they get to check in with people with their diet. So like when I did my study, we didn't have those resources. It was me, my assistant who helped me out, and then Dr. Campbell. Like we didn't have any of that stuff. But now they've really built up a cool atmosphere there. So their physique science club, I presented it to them like a few months ago. There was like 25 kids in the physique science club. Like what? And it's so awesome. So like all of them participate. It's super, all the stuff that we like, he's basically researching. So they did actually do a study where it was a baseline period of tracking for 2 weeks, got a handle on what they were eating as far as baseline calories, and then they did a 7-week diet. So there was a 7-week either continuous diet, so they ate the same amount of calories every single day, 7 weeks, or they had 5 days of low days and then 2 refeed days. And the way that it worked was that the deficit was the same for both. That's obviously how research has to work, but it was different implementation. So for the 7-day diet, it was a 25% caloric reduction. For the refeed group, it was a 35% reduction for 5 days and then 100%, so AKA maintenance, for those 2 days. And the maintenance calories, the increase only came from carbohydrates, which is typically what most coaches in our situation would do. So it was really, really awesome that we got to see this research. Like that's pretty much textbook, like what all of us would do, not textbook, but pretty much what we would like to implement, right? Like, hey, 2 refeeds from carbs, people who are actually training, people who are tracking, like they actually know what they're doing. So over a 7-week diet, which for anybody who's listening, you're like, oh, 7 weeks isn't shit. Well, in a university setting, you have to be aware of certain things. So they had a 2-week baseline period and a 7-week diet. So that's 9 weeks. There's only so many weeks in a semester. And in my study, we did it over 2 semesters, and that's really, really hard, particularly if it's a training study. So these people are coming to the lab 4 days a week, every week, and doing 3 different testing bouts. So you can really only keep people there for so long. So if you guys are listening and saying, why isn't it longer? That's why. So they had about 27 people finish, and they basically saw that in both groups, they had about the same fat mass reduction, but the refeed group had better lean body mass retention, and therefore they also had a little bit higher RMRs as well, which of course most of the RMR variance comes from muscle mass changes, so that would make sense. So it's pretty cool to see, like, hey, fat mass reduction, same, but we actually retained more lean body mass, which, as we all know as coaches, is really one of the most important things, and arguably losing fat-free mass is really where you see a lot of the negative hormonal adaptations and just adaptations in general from dieting. So that was, that's one of the coolest things that we've hypothesized with refeeds being helpful. And we actually got to see it in the literature. Of course, it's only one study, but it's something that all of us have been seeing for years and years now. So it was really cool to actually see it in practice. And I'm just really happy. They just published that. I can send you guys the link. It's open access, so you can put it in the show notes.
Sweet.
So people can read it.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's research. But and literally I'm so excited we got to talk about this now because the paper is finally out. And it's really cool because this research takes forever to, that study happened a while ago and now it's finally just coming out. And that's just the nature of academia, which is why it's always a little bit behind what coaches are doing. But what I think is so awesome that Campbell is doing, like I said, is doing research on diet breaks, refeeds, all the things that are actually pertinent to what we do, and they're actually using real life coaches to help out.
You guys got any questions?
I'm just curious. I don't think this happened. Was it looked at, Laurin, just using one refeed a week?
No, so not for this one. So really where this came from, kind of the theoretical model was something that Eric Helms proposed years ago. And his example, I always try to credit him with this, was circling the drain, right? So when we're dieting, we're having these adaptations and we're going down the drain, right? That's pretty obvious. And you can't get away from that the leaner that you get, particularly when we're getting very, very lean for, let's say, like a physique competition. So you're circling the drain. And if you have maybe one refeed, you might stop it. But if you have two, you might be able to bring it back up. And there was some initial research actually that was looking at LH pulsativity that showed, and this was obviously in females, not males. The study that was at Dr. Campbell's lab was mixed, but so looking at females' LH pulsatility, it was actually preserved better when they had 2 higher days of food versus 1 higher day. But the calories were the same. So trying to think of how to say this concisely. So basically there was 1 really big refeed or 2 refeeds that were smaller, but they equated to the same amount as the 1, right? So you had 1 giant or 2 moderate, and the 2 moderate were actually better. So that was the first basis of kind of Helms's interpretation, like, hey, if we're trying to stop adaptations, theoretically this could work. And in practice, he started doing this, I started doing this. I know a lot of coaches have done this. And, if you listen to Eric or myself or anybody really, I always try to say, hey, like, we're going to use 0 to 3 refeeds because ideally, I used to always say, 2 refeeds, that's what, everybody's been talking about. That's what's been shown. It works really well. In practice, what we see in research doesn't always, fall out. And the most important thing that I've actually changed my position on over the years is how many refeeds and when. So I used to say, everybody starts with a 5 and 2 split because that's ideal, right? Like that's what's optimal. Yes, but if we're not getting fat loss going, I'd rather have 0 to 1 refeeds or just, none at all in the beginning of a diet when somebody has a lot more body fat versus at the end of a diet where they might need 2 or 3 refeeds in a row because they're so lean. So in research that hasn't been looked at in the way that Campbell looked at it, only because the 5 and 2 split was like theoretically, hey, if we're going to pick one, this is going to be better. And realistically, if we had bigger subject pool, they probably would have been able to do like a 0, a 1, or a 2 refeed split. But when you only have 27 people finishing out of the almost 60 people recruited, it's really hard to split that into 3 groups and actually see any statistical significance.
Yeah, makes sense. The one thing too I'd be really curious about is like, how far can you push the 5? Like, in other words, like sometimes, like I'll push it to 6 days where I'd actually do medium and lows, 3 of them, but they're every other day. And then I do 2 highs. So I'm pushing it 6 days. And it's like, how many days can I push it and leave you depleted, but still get the effect? And I'm just curious, you know what I mean? It'd be cool to see that as well as all.
And that's always, that's always the nerd stuff that we want to do. Cause like we're interested in all this, but also like really practical. And that's where I think that science is important to look at as a theoretical framework. Hey, this makes sense. Let's be closer to here. But, sometimes it's going to be plus or minus around this because there's never going to be a perfect study. And it's honestly amazing what they've done at this lab, the people that they're recruiting, the level of, commitment that we're seeing now, but it's still very rare,
Sure.
So it's very hard to get people who are going to train, come in on time, push themselves, eat on a diet, not get paid. I mean, there's a lot here, right? Now, some of the cool research, if they have these big grants and funding is they will get, hey, food is provided. So actually one of the biggest studies that they've modeled Called the
Yeah,
Matador
you
Summit.
froze again.
MATDOR.
Hey, you froze.
You froze at modeled.
You froze at modeled.
Okay. So they modeled it after what's called the Matador Summit study, MATDOR. And basically they looked at, this was 2 weeks of dieting and 2 weeks of maintenance for X amount of time versus just continuous dieting. So obviously it was double the time dieting, but they had weeks of maintenance sandwiched in between, and they actually saw better results. Now, it's actually one of the best studies I've ever read as far as how meticulous it was. Again, I can send you guys that link and you can put it in the show notes.
Sure, please do.
Super meticulous for the design. Like, I almost couldn't say there's anything they need to change besides let's just replicate it. The only thing is was really awesome was that they were literally given all the food. The participants were given the food. So that kind of stuff is where it's like, whoa, like this is awesome. Now, the population was overweight, sedentary men, not really pertinent to us.
Yeah.
But that's where Campbell has said, okay, now we're taking it. We've done the diet break research to where it's modeled off of that. But again, we can't provide all that stuff, but it's pretty cool. So there is some research to where it's done, but it's just, you got to get that kind of funding. You got to be at a huge university. You got to, whatever. So we're lucky if we get some money to like, hey, take some blood and, give them protein afterwards.
Right.
Like, that's exciting. And I know like when I got a grant, we bought a new RMR, so that's the kind of stuff that you have to do on a smaller scale. But it is growing. And I think that this kind of research will start coming out more. And it's really cool to see, just because again, it gives coaches a practical guideline of, hey, here's where we should kind of be. Here's a theoretical framework. And then going above and below this is probably a good idea. Going really far outside of these things might not be ideal.
I have another question for you. Have you just tried, because one of the other things that I do sometimes is 3 low and 1 high. So you're getting 2 refeeds basically, every 7th or 8th day, but they're not back to back. Is there something that's really pertinent about back to back?
So theoretically,
I'm curious what you think.
The metabolic adaptations, or halting the metabolic adaptations, have been seen to be minimized with the back-to-back nature versus splitting it up.
Got it.
So that's where the 2 consecutive refeeds came in versus 2 over a 7 or 8 day period. And that's kind of what we've seen from some of the more hormonal side of things. Again, these are not, exactly our population, but it's still a, female exercising kind of a population, maybe more like endurance or whoever they can get, like leisurely activity kind of people. But that's what has been the benefit of putting them back to back. And then also kind of as a side thing, what I saw in practice was that even for myself, when I used to do things like, hey, 3 low, 1 high, it sometimes it works for people who like, maybe a client really struggles, like, hey, every Thursday hits and I'm kind of really struggling, right? And I'd really like to have something to look forward to.
Right.
But on the flip side, there's people who are very, they really look forward to the weekends, or they really look forward to, hey, I love my schedule Monday through Friday with work, and then Saturday, Sunday is a little bit different. So they kind of like the 2 there. So it's always going to depend on the client as far as execution goes. Like, yeah, great if your LH pulsatility is a little bit better, but if you're going to overeat, that doesn't matter, right? We need to make sure that practically you can stay on this. I've just seen that a lot of people really thrive with the 2 consecutive, because it's like, hey, I get these 2 days, I get to kind of relax, and it's going to be typically on a Saturday and Sunday, so it's going to be a little bit different of a schedule than like their work week. But there's a lot of times where, hey, we're not having refeeds, and that was, like I said, one of the biggest things that I actually changed as a coach over the past few years. Was I always thought, oh, optimal 5 and 2, we got to start there, but I started realizing that for a lot of clients, it just wasn't cutting it to start their fat loss. No. So I preface it now and say, hey, we might get a refeed. And if I've worked with them before and done multiple diet cycles, I might even say, hey, we're doing no refeeds to start. We're going to start a little bit lower, a little more aggressive, get this chipping, and then we can actually add them in and you respond better.
That's how I do. As it gets closer to the show, I get to the 2, and most of my girls are now at the 2. And something I'm doing that actually – New Ethics might be willing to donate product at some point if these types of things are curious. But what I'm doing is, I call it more like a cortisol reset. I'm giving probably about 220 carbs, and back to back, I'm pulling all cardio, all training, and I'm doing Cordes every 3 hours. And my girls are just hitting new lows like no other. And it's keeping them a lot healthier too. And so obviously my theory is that I'm bringing their cortisol back in a pretty aggressive way by doing that. And that is also, improving hormonal balance and everything else. So I don't have anything other than anecdotal to back it up, but those are types of things that if ever down the line the lab was looking to try different things in that way, maybe New Ethics would be interested. So
yeah, I can put you in contact for sure. And, that's something that, when research is done, like those are the practical things, right? Like, hey, if you want to test out a new theory and whether it's a product involved or not, there's going to have to be some kind of funding. There's going to have to be some kind of, hey, we want to get blood work done. Well, where's that money coming from, right? People don't realize that schools don't just have money sitting around. Like they have to typically get funding for that. And we don't do, we don't do blood work in the lab. We send them to like a lab corp or whatever. It just gets kind of dicey with what we have access to. So we have done some studies actually where we've done that recently. And, people have donated money, and that's where it's like, hey, this is how it's going to get done. They actually did a post-show case study. It was like 8 people. Mm-hmm. So I guess you'd call that a case study, where they all dieted down different shows, but just end body fat. And then they tested them several times afterwards, and they had full blood labs done as well as just seeing what they were just tracking what they did afterwards. They weren't saying, hey, like you have to do a certain protocol. Yeah. So that was super cool and really, really insightful. But again, it's like somebody had to pay for that, right? Because money doesn't come out of nowhere for labs. But yeah, I can definitely put you in contact because I think that's super interesting as well. And I actually like doing that. And that's a question I get a lot about refeeds actually is how do you structure them? Should I train on my refeed days? Should I take a full break, etc.? I obviously, again, think it depends on the client, but I have seen success when people will, like, basically, if you have 2 refeeds in a row, typically that 3rd day and then 4th day is when I see the best training. So you've had time to kind of synthesize the glycogen, let everything sit, kind of rest a little bit. So say you have Saturday, Sunday, double refeed, Monday, Tuesday, you're going to be feeling pretty good. By Wednesday, you're going to be pretty flat again. Yep. And that's the reality. But that's kind of when I say, hey, like, you can have a refeed and not actually train hard that day. I'd rather you do it afterwards. Again, it'll depend on somebody's schedule. Yep. But just because you have higher food that day does not mean at all that you need to kill it. And it might actually help to have full break and just, double up on other days.
Yeah, that's why I've been doing it, the full break, to really just get the cortisol down and I make them sleep. I make them get to bed earlier too, because sleep's so big for bringing inflammation down and just fat loss.
We should do a podcast on that. Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah. So all of it together, I've just been getting a lot of success. But like you said, I don't start out that way. A lot of times someone's got too much body fat or they're just looking like they had a good off season and eating. I don't use one at all because they got plenty of fat and their carbs are high enough, I think that would be whenever that one of the shows I do where it was like, there's no point doing a refeed right at the beginning when your carbs are high enough and you're not flattening out big time right away. So
yes. And you're going to spare a lot more muscle when you have more body fat, right? Like if you're close to stage, that's where you're really at the highest risk, of course, of losing body fat. And I, mostly work with almost all natural athletes. So I have to really be careful with that, which is why these kind of strategies are super important. But yeah, in the beginning of a diet, it's like, hey, I'd much rather us get a little bit more aggressive, maybe even do kind of like an insulin reset kind of strategy.
Yep.
Be really particular about this, hammer it. And then also the clients are really excited about dieting at that point, right? Like you don't really have to convince people at the start to be motivated and sticking to it. Whereas, down the line, when you say, hey, take a double refeed this week and don't do cardio, people are like freaking out. They're so happy.
Yes. Agreed.
So I think that but in the beginning, if you're like, hey, we're really going to push it, people are like, yeah, I'm ready. So, psychologically, and we're actually going to do, because of this, I've talked to Campbell about this theory as well. We're actually going to do a rapid fat loss study. Well, actually it should have been now, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So soon, because the schools are shut down for non-essential research. But so we're going to be doing a rapid fat loss study too, and see, hey, you get really, really aggressive for a short amount of time. At what point is too much, and does this actually help, right? Because like I talked to him, like, hey, people are excited in the beginning to diet, but at what point do we start seeing these negative adaptations from it?
That's when I use my HIIT early on too, and then I usually have to pull it for cortisol reasons. But yeah, I'm on the same page, and I'd be actually really interested in that study. But I'll quit blabbing, guys. Do you have any questions that you want to jump in on?
Yeah, Laurin, with the 2-day refeed, can you speculate as to what's going on hormonally, maybe with thyroid, or why is there like a lag between, 1 day versus 2? Like what's going on that second day?
So I think that it's just more time, basically, is my thought. Like, you're just kind of giving the body like almost like that. So a lot of people will call it like the whoosh effect, right? And that's more of
Uh-oh.
there's a few things with higher food, right? So there's leptin. People always talk about leptin. In my opinion, leptin is so transient that even if there are leptin changes, the changes that we're going to see if somebody is still in a chronic calorie deficit are not going to be that important, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Now, do we still see temporary changes in leptin from a double refeed, so that potentially, again, Monday and maybe even Tuesday are slightly more, okay, like you're not as ravenous, right? Like, so there's different things there. So that's one thing people always talk about with refeeds is leptin. I'm not too convinced on that, because obviously the leaner somebody
less
gets,
intense, I guess. But the levels of leptin
so transient. Yeah, like basically leptin is 100% controlled, mostly controlled, not 100%, mostly controlled by fat cells. So the smaller your fat cells are, the more sensitive they are, particularly to leptin. So even if you have a 1 or 2 day refeed, it's not really changing it that much. So I'm not holding my hat on the leptin argument at all in this position. I do think that it could potentially have cortisol changes, lowering cortisol. Obviously, we know that with carbs in general. But then also something else kind of from the muscular perspective is if there is a little bit of higher insulin and, you're going to maybe have better training, better recovery, better muscle protein synthesis. I think that's where we're seeing a lot of these positive things. And the fact that we're not just stripping people of lean body mass is what's helping kind of everything else, in my opinion, is really where the key point of the refeed, where the refeeds come from, is kind of maintaining that lean body mass. And again, because so say you have a refeed Saturday, Sunday, again, just as an example, Monday, Tuesday, you have better training. Well, what does that mean? You might actually be preserving muscle tissue better because you actually had better training intensity. So there's a few factors going into there. They didn't measure insulin in that current study. Again, it comes down to, funding and kind of all that. A few people did look at leptin, but there wasn't huge changes. And as far as like the hormonal aspect goes, as far as like I said before, like the LH pulsativity, and I think it's just like a time thing. I think like Eric's example, you're going down the drain and you either stop it or maybe you go a little bit up. And that's kind of the best way that I can think conceptually to describe it. And I don't know much else outside of that, but I think it's just and like we see, like we see everything with hormones is time, right? Like, people always say, oh, I feel like shit after a show. And I'm like, well, how long did you diet? Oh, 10 months. Okay, well, buckle up. It's going to be hard for a while, right? And there's nothing that we do, no amount of food, no amount of sleep, no amount of supplements, whatever, you're still going to have to take time to recover. Now, that time can be shortened, but it's still just going to take time. So I think the same way with the adaptations is, hey, if we just have a little bit more time kind of in this break period, whether it's maintenance or maybe even higher, like you were talking about, Jason, like having these like higher days, I think that's kind of when your body goes, oh, okay, I'm safe.
What are some of the extremes that you've seen or have you had to do? So for example, like, have you ever had to give someone like a week of high calories and high carbs?
Yeah, that would be a diet break.
Like a straight up cheat meal, like almost like a, like a skip load type thing, like. So
I don't really usually do that because I work with mostly females, and who are normal size, right? If we're talking about pretty much if somebody is not in a competition phase, right? Like this is less important, right? Like you need less refeeds, less aggressive stuff. Say we're talking about a competitor. I'm typically dealing with bikini and figure competitors who are just much smaller than, a male who's eating 800 carbs in the off season, like stuff like that, right? So I'm not really seeing anything to where I'm saying, hey, go have this crazy meal and go do all this stuff. Now, I will do diet breaks, and I do those semi-regularly. So that would be basically a week at air quotes maintenance, which of course we don't know what maintenance is at that point, but we're assuming if they've had refeeds, that's typically where I put them. So say they have a 200 carb refeed, right? And they're on 120 carbs normally. Hey, let's do a week of 200 carbs, drop your cardio in half, and let's see where you're at. Or if they're not having refeeds, I might just bump it up, several hundred calories just coming mostly from carbs. So I will do that for clients. It will, of course, depend on how they're responding, where they're at. And a lot of times it's actually when people don't expect it, right? They're kind of at that breaking point. And it's not necessarily even a mental breaking point. Like they don't want to stick to the diet. It's more of like my body feels like it's almost like an intuitive feeling. Like when I read somebody's update that I can just tell, I'm like, wow, like you need a break. Like I can just read through this. Like you need something. So sometimes it's, if they haven't been having refeeds, I might give them 2 or 3 refeeds. And sometimes it's like, hey, take a whole week and see how you feel. And more times than not, people feel better from that. Not always, but typically they do. So I will do that for a client. It just depends on how they're progressing. And one thing that I've actually been doing, which I think would be really pertinent to talk about now, given the situation of life, is reversing people into shows. So this is something I started doing last year when I had the opportunity to, and just because it is so hard typically to get people lean enough and then have enough time before their first show. But for clients that I was able to do this with, basically I started just walking up their calories either on a higher refeed frequency or just higher daily totals. And to the point where I had some clients who were, I mean, absolutely peeled, and they're eating 230 carbs and they're normal women, you know, like they're normal size women, and they're absolutely shredded. Right. So it's, now, is that the norm? No. But that is possible. And I think that right now, particularly, we're in this situation where we're recording this the last day of March, and we don't really know what's going on with the show schedules. So what I've pretty much told all my clients to do is, hey, if you're prepping for a show and you want to continue to prep, which pretty much everybody has, we're just dieting until you're stage ready, and then we're going to add food in. And then if we do have to pull the plug because shows aren't until super late and it's not healthy for your body, then we'll discuss that then. But for now, we're in a position to where I think that, we're still going to have shows, you know what I mean? It's just a matter of when. So that's actually a strategy that I plan on using at this point. So it's either adding in more food on a daily basis or just kind of increasing, hey, you had 2 refeeds or 1 refeed, let's do 3, kind of see how you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I actually have a question for you, but it's about the research. So over 60 started, but under 30 finished. Why do you think that was?
Oh, that's super common.
Okay.
Super common. So like I said in the beginning, they're not being paid. They have to come into the lab 4 times to train. Mm-hmm. They have to come in 3 times for testing. So I actually, in research, you have to write down why people dropped out. So I will actually write it all out. I'll tell you right now.
I was just curious what some of the things were.
Yeah. Basically, it says 58 started. A few never completed all the baseline testing. Again, common. People sign up for stuff, don't fucking finish it. 28 withdrew from the study. So that pretty much means that they started and that they most likely just kind of fell off. And if we're asking people to come in and train a certain amount of times and they're not doing that, well, that's not going to work. And then there was a few that at the end of the study basically said I wasn't 100% with the diet, and that you have to withdraw those people. So when it says hey, 20 people, quit for the volition, which is exactly what happened for my study, people just stop showing up, and you call them, you email them, you text them, and they don't, and you can't force people to do stuff, and it's very unfortunate. And, I just wish hey, just don't sign up. Right. But that's actually why you have to recruit those high numbers, because we expect a big dropout rate. And when I was doing my study, and Campbell he's one of the most interesting people. His personality is very dry. He's very dry sense of humor. It's amazing. And he's very not negative, but super realist, to where he's hey, you need to recruit at least 50 people because over half of them are going to drop out. And I'm like, it's my first study. Why are you telling me this? He's like, no, they're going to. And I'm like, why? He's like, because they don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay. And it's literally true. People, you have to recruit way more people than you think you're going to need, because they are going to fall off. And then there's always going to be people who at the end, they finish it out, and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, I did this. And you're like, hey,
yep.
We clearly told you not to do it.
Yeah.
For example, we had somebody in my study who started taking creatine and gained a bunch of weight, which is all going to be water weight, which is all going to look like lean body mass.
Muscle,
and I'm like, we're looking at body comp. You can't do that.
Right.
So and at this point, when I did my research, we didn't have the body water machine. Now we do, so we can actually see that, which is cool. But still, it's just comical what people think is okay. And luckily, they did recruit enough people to where they still had a very valid study. But yeah, that's super, super common.
Okay, cool. I didn't know, but it was nice to hear you guys took some variable controls on that, made sure It sounded really, really tight. So
there's many researchers who don't do that. And it's very sad because, I mean, again, this is not life or death stuff. We're talking about carbs, right? But, you know, there's obviously scientists who are in a position to where they're studying very, very important things. And it, you know, if you're lying, like, that's so bad. And there are people who that I know who've done that. And it's literally
you're frozen
scientific
again.
research. Like, please get a hold of yourself. Like,
no, I have a question for you. And then, unless you guys got a question, do you all got a question?
I'm okay for now. I mean, I have one I could throw at her, but you haven't asked a bunch. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, the 5 low 2 high. We talked about that, how that relates in, you know, in terms of physique competition and so forth. I think. How would you take that and apply that research with an average Joe, average Yang general lifestyle client? Because we're gonna have quite a few of those are our listeners too.
Yeah, because they're gonna want a free meal.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to bring up too, was like
it makes
a refeed's completely different than a free meal.
Very different.
And I think it's important we kind of break that down and out. So
yes, so a refeed, especially in the context of what we were talking about in the study, was that it's you know, you're looking at exact maintenance, basically what they were at maintenance to begin with. They use those exact calories, and they were all from carbohydrates. So some people do like wonky stuff with change this, change that. Pretty much, if I'm giving a client a refeed, hey, you're upping your carbs. Like, we're not changing anything else, keeping that consistent. Eat more carbs. Now, for lifestyle clients, I 100% will do refeeds for lifestyle clients as well. Their goal is to still get lean. Pretty much everybody who works with me, you know, if they're trying to diet, like, they still want to, you know, get leaner, right? Are they going to get on stage and get to those same levels of body fat? No. But I'm still going to use that because it is psychologically very helpful. It is something to look forward to, and it does help with their training. So if we can continue to push training, I'm super happy, right? And if we can hold on to lean body mass, even if you're a lifestyle client, that's still important. Obviously, it's not as important as if you're a competition client, but it's still incredibly important. And mostly, like I said, it comes from that kind of psychological place as well. So for lifestyle clients, though, we do have the opportunity, and this is something that, you know, I've talked about the physique, PEC, and, you know, is sometimes I'll do these untracked meals. And obviously, again, it's going to be different in a dieting situation, to where it's not just like, hey, have, you know, whatever you want, right? But it could be like, hey, here are your targets beforehand, and I want you to go have dinner. Here's roughly what dinner should look like, but go have that untracked. So I will do that for certain clients, and the targets that I give them beforehand are still fairly conservative, so that even if they do have a bigger meal, it's still just going to be like a refeed meal. And so there's no real perfect way of doing that, and it's going to depend on the client. And again, that's going to kind of come down to the check-in, to where they say, like, you know, depending on the week, right? It might be like, hey, this is a better week. Like right now, for most of my clients, not all, but most, I'm saying, hey, like, let's double down on your diet. You don't have shit to do. You can't go out and socialize, which is really the hardest part about sticking to a diet. Is you want to go out, you want to socialize, you want to eat out, you want to hang out with your friends. You're not doing that right now. So let's double down on our dieting effort, because you're quarantined. Yes, you're around food all day. Now, some people, it's not working out that way because of other life situations, and that's totally fine. But in a regular life situation, there's going to be times where people are like, hey, this weekend I have XYZ coming up. So I might say, hey, you know what? Instead of 2 refeeds, we're just going to do 6 normal days, and then you're going to have these targets beforehand, and then go have an untracked meal for that event. Perfect. And then we'll assess from there, right? So it's all about kind of playing with it for the lifestyle client. For the competition client, it's kind of like, hey, you know, you kind of got to suck this up. Like, I've gone to plenty of events and just drank water and been hungry. That's what you need to do too. And if, you know, somebody doesn't want to do that, then it's probably not the best time for them to do competition prep. But for a lifestyle client, it's going to be a lot more lenient. And they have to understand that too. Like if say we do that for a few weeks in a row and they're like, hey, I'm not making any progress. I'm like, well, you wanted to do this. So there has to be a trade-off somewhere, right? I don't want to keep you dieting forever, but I also want to work in, you know, your regular life, but we have to come somewhere in the middle. So yes, I still do use refeeds for lifestyle clients. I'm a big proponent of it, again, just from a social and kind of lifestyle perspective. And yeah.
So is it kind of the same? I mean, I know for me, when a lot of these people start out, they're not in the leanest shape. And so whether I need to do some sort of reset, diet them first before they'd ever gain lean mass, I might only give them 1 free meal. But what do you do as they get leaner? Do you have a second day that is then controlled? Like, so you might say, all right, Saturday, you get this refeed. maybe keep it lower fat, but carbs are higher. And then on Sunday, are you saying you're going to do 200 carbs for the day, or do you not ever do that?
It'll just depend on the client. But yes, that definitely happens. There's sometimes where I say, hey, we're doing no refeeds, no untracked meals. Other times it's, hey, we're doing 2 untracked meals. Other times it's, we're doing strictly refeeds. Sometimes we mix it. And sometimes it'll just change week by week, depending on, again, what they have going on. If somebody has a pretty stable life and they don't really have anything that's happening, okay, hey, let's just track this. But I deal with a lot of very, very type A neurotic clients who are overcoming a lot of eating issues. I don't want to say eating disorders, but kind of disordered eating. So I'm heavily pushing for them to be able to eat 2 untracked meals, because the untracked meal is not a cheat meal. The untracked meal is, I made stir fry with my husband and I got to eat it and it wasn't like the Last Supper. Mm-hmm. That's a huge win for me. So that's really what I'm kind of working on when it's an untracked meal. Obviously that's a whole different conversation and kind of, again, what I focus on in our talk in Georgia, and would have been Nashville, sad, but we'll, whatever we decide next, we'll be doing it there. And that's really where I'm coming from with that, right? So this is okay, hey, we've already developed these solid habits and whatever, and now we're trying to actually pull away from the, if I don't have my FitnessPal, I don't know how to eat. That's a whole different client, right? So the client who's just kind of starting out and is still trying to get a grasp on consistency, that's where a little bit more of that tracking and a little bit more direction is going to help them. And even if I do say, hey, go have an untracked meal, I might give them suggestions or say, hey, where are you going this week? And let's kind of plan it. So, but then sometimes when people are on the other end of it, they can't have a bite of rice that's not untracked without crying. So you're like, whoa, we got to work on that.
For sure.
So it just kind of depends. But yeah, I like interchanging them, honestly. But again, for the competition client, it's going to be a little stricter with all that pretty much at all times. Besides, like, I had a lot of people start dieting early this year. So like late 2019 for, early this year, which of course didn't really pan out, but in any case, they were dieting through the holidays. So, hey, it's Christmas, be smart, but you can eat Christmas. I'm not going to, hey, track your Christmas dinner, like unless they were in peak week or something, they weren't. Right. Which I was in peak week on Thanksgiving one year. So I did track my Thanksgiving to the T one year. Sodium and everything, but so it is, that was pretty, it's fine. We have it at my house. So it was no really big issue, but it definitely was like, oh man, this is an interesting day to track
it's a small amount of
everything. Yeah. Right. Lots of turkey.
Now, are you guys looking at expanding the next round of all this? And what I mean by that, would you guys do blood work and things like that? Is that being looked at to understand like hormonal response, but the difference between men and women? Because I know that there's a difference in how the body takes leptin between the two sexes, obviously. Response to progesterone, the response of estrogen and testosterone. So what are you guys kind of planning there?
Again, that comes down 100% to funding. Okay. So at this point, we have a amazing training facility. We've built up the lab to be awesome. Basically when I started there, like it was nothing, and now we've built it to be really, really great. And we have people who are very well trained on how to coach people how to train. We have a great staff of nutrition coaches who help out with kind of helping out with that research. And we have all of the best, in my opinion, body comp measurement tools. So we have 2 different RMRs. We have the body water machine. We have 2 different types of body comp measurements that we use. So pretty much all of that is set, and we can do literally any kind of body composition, diet, training study that we need to do. Obviously, blood work is the next piece. And like I said, we do not have the staff or the size of the school to have a full-time, like a phlebotomist come in and like do all the lab work there. And labs are very, very expensive when you're doing it like in this kind of a way. Right. So pretty much, again, it comes down to funding. And like in this study, the refeed study, there was a small subset of people who got their leptin done, right? Was it everybody? No, it was a small subset, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously the goal would be to do full everything, right? We have body comp, we have training, we have diet, we have hormones, but again, it's just going to come down to the types of funding that we get. But Campbell is not opposed to that at all. It's just a matter of practicality. And then of course, you got to convince people, hey, you got to come do all this stuff and go get your blood work done. And some people don't want to do that either. Even if it's like, they're not paying for it.
Right.
Like you'd be amazed at the stuff, but then again, you'd also be amazed. Well, yeah, you guys know, but you'd also be amazed. Dude, I had somebody, one of my friends, when I did my study, you had to come in 5 times over 22 weeks. And she drove from Tallahassee to Tampa to do that study because she was one of my friends from Florida State.
Damn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
guys,
there's people will do cool stuff on both ends.
Yeah.
You guys got any questions?
I'm good on mine for now.
All right.
We have a study like that up here. I don't know, Lauren, have you ever heard of the school called Framingham State in Massachusetts?
I don't know. I don't think so.
They have a very good nutrition program. It's like
okay.
They like recognized, and they do these studies all the time. And I always see like ads for them, and they'll provide you food, and they'll actually pay you too.
That's
and
awesome.
Is that like, and they have like a really poor compliance rate, I guess. Like you said, they have a lot of people, but then like at the end, only like 20 people will be left. And I think like this is just me thinking, right? And I don't know if this is true or not, but I think a lot of these people like enter these studies as like a free coaching, like free diet type of thing. They're like, oh, this is my chance to like get my food made for me and like I can diet down, lose some weight. And then they're like, oh, this sucks. They quit for like the same reasons why people would quit like coaching,
Yeah. It gets hard. Yeah.
And it's just so hard to like, I empathize with you because it's so hard to control these variables, especially if they're making their meals at home. You don't know if they're snacking, and like with training clients, they sometimes won't tell you if they had a cheat meal,
Yeah.
So it's wild, all the things you have to control. You froze up again.
Yeah, she's like really frozen.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Let's give her a minute.
Yeah, we'll give her a minute.
Yeah, those studies are tough though,
Yeah. Well,
I would participate.
Yeah, because you're a hardcore bodybuilder. I would love it too.
I want to do an OI study. I just wish they would just study me, but they won't even do it.
You froze.
Yeah, you guys were all frozen. I was like, can anybody hear me?
Nah, we're just bullshitting.
We're just
okay. Yeah. You're like, Laurin sucks. I don't know what she's written about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely one of the hardest things. But I will say that one of the cool things about, again, Campbell's created this cool culture. And this was one of the things that he talked about when I joined the program, was like, we're going to create a culture of like female physique research. I'm like, okay, crazy guy, whatever. Like literally I was like, you're insane, but sure. But we literally have, like, he has created all this. And like now a lot of the people who do the studies are people, like, they continuously do different studies. So like they kind of know the drill, they're very excited about doing the research. And I think that, and even like when I go and I've talked to the, classes and like the physique science, like groups, people are much more interested in this stuff now. So it's definitely like things are changing. And I do think that people are, there's always gonna be people who want to sign up for stuff and they get it over their head and they just quit. That's always people. But I think it has gone a little better.
I think that in the next 5 years, there's going to be universities that have coaching degrees.
I mean, we have literally a whole concentration just in physique science. Like we're getting that approved soon.
Okay, so you guys might be the first one, but I know that there's going to be a degree in coaching. I mean, you can't not with how big the market is. There's people who want to go study it at age 18, not later in life. And so I think that's coming. And then, my one thing is I wish that, when I went to school, there was some place like it's USF, right?
Yes.
I wish there was some place like that. I mean, I didn't find it until I was 21. I was already pretty far through my degree, but it would have been cool to have those kind of options. So I think that's really exciting I don't have many young listeners we have, but at least I know, like, if any of my kids kind of get really into it, I can, be like, hey, there's actually really good avenues for this, rather than just kind of having to, self-teach and go to seminars like dad had to do. But that's kind of cool the way the direction it's going. I think.
And from the time that I started, and we've talked about this too, like when we go and present, like from the time that I've started really getting into presenting to now, and even when I've gone and talked to the classes before and then now, like when I was in the program, basically even back to undergrad, when I was in my undergrad for exercise science, and you go around the room and you're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do exercise science. And everybody's like, what? Everybody else was like, doctor, OT, PT, like the whole deal, right? Like anything else they could do for like pre-med, because that was like basically Florida State's exercise science program. I could have gone to med school with the requirements, right?
Gotcha.
And then I was like, exercise science. And everybody's like, oh my God, what? And then when I got to the master's program, it was like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I do bodybuilding. And then everybody else was like strength conditioning, wellness, like, whatever. Right. And then now when I go and talk to the students, I'm like, who wants to be a physique coach? And like half the class is raising their hand. We're like,
sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
and when we go and present, and I always pull the room just because I want to like get a feel for like who's there, and between personal trainers and online trainers, it's, I would say, most people. Same thing, like anytime that I've presented recently, it's crazy. And now when people say, oh, I'm a coach, they could have 5 clients. Doesn't mean that's like what they do full time, but they still have clients, you know what I mean? So people are just getting more into this. So yeah, I'm glad that we have resources, cool research is coming out, and, maybe one day we'll be able to make a whole online university with that, because, obviously that's the biggest barrier to entry is people going to schools. But in any case, I'll stop rambling about that. And just I was just reading this paper the other day, I thought I would share. So obviously I know that we're talking a lot about, there's a nuance between, hey, can somebody have, we all have clients who, I had 3 refeeds and I got super lean. And then there's people like, I haven't had a carb in months, right? Like there's always going to be those clients. So this was actually, it's an old paper from the 90s, but it was a New England Journal of Medicine. And it was the response to long-term overfeeding in identical twins. So anytime you can get identical twin research, that's pretty cool. And basically what they did was they lived in-house. So they had, which was, again, hard to do, but this was, a little bit of an older paper. And they overfed them by 1,000 calories per day. Now they did this for 6 days out of the week, and then 1 day was maintenance. So they had 84 days of 1,000 calories of overfeeding.
Jeez.
Now, yeah, right. Whew, sign me up for this study. Just sit around and eat all day. And they literally talk about the daily activities were reading. They went on 1 walk. They played video games. Like they literally were doing nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, right? But the mean weight gain was 8.1 kilograms expected, right? Like 100 days. Yeah. Okay. But the range was 4.3 to 13.3. And within kind of the twin groups, you saw similarities. So obviously, again, this is kind of stuff that we know, like, in the trenches, but it's literally showing like, hey, there's a range. Like most people gained 8 pounds, but there's this range of 4.5 to 13.5 of, stability. So when we talk about things like really anything when it comes to diet and diet and training, but particularly with diet, I love science and I love statistics I don't love statistics, but I love looking at stuff like that, right? Significance, but you have to look at the range too.
Yeah.
And you have to say, hey, this is not going to work for everybody. For most people, it's going to be here, but like always, there's always outliers. So some people are getting overfed 1,000 calories a day and playing video games and barely gained any weight. Other people gained a hefty amount of weight, particularly in their stomach, right? Which was actually one of the parts of the research. But so the same thing with refeeds. There's going to be some clients who are going to be able to tolerate refeeds the entire prep and keep on crushing it. I have plenty of clients like that. And then there's a lot of clients who they rarely see a refeed and that works a lot better for them. So it's going to be very nuanced, and that's obviously where a coach's job comes in. And that's where, check-ins and feedback from them is the most important.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I don't have anything else, Jeff Black.
Sue, have you got anything?
I'm good.
Laurin, I'm going to just impart this final question upon you.
Oh, God.
Anything you would like to say about this topic before we wrap it up that we might not have covered that you would really like an up-and-coming coach or coach you might follow or an average Joe lifestyle person to take away?
Kind of to loop back to what I was just saying, like this is going to be a nuanced discussion with your client. And this is why it's really important that as a coach, you're asking the right questions. It is no longer, hey, did you hit your macros this week? That doesn't cut it. If you really want to be a good coach, you need to be asking the right questions and getting the right feedback from them. And understand that something like refeeds can be an amazing tool, but it doesn't mean that it has to be used super black and white. Like I said, when people ask, oh, how many refeeds do you do a week? Oh, 0 to 3. I don't know. Kind of depends on the client. So be flexible in your methods. Use science as kind of your grounding place, but then be comfortable going in and out of that and going above and below recommendations.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that rapid fat loss research because that will help a lot of us be able to tell clients and they come to us like, I didn't lose 16 pounds in 4 weeks. And I'm like, oh, I know.
So we actually used me as some baseline research to test this out because I basically came to Campbell with this idea and I was like, hey, clients are really interested in doing this kind of stuff when they're first starting a diet. How would it affect how would it affect them? So we basically said, I slashed, I was in a period like right now where I'm eating kind of what like high calories, probably around 2,500-ish, upwards of that daily. Cut it to 50 grams of carbs, all from vegetables, a gram of protein per pound, and like 45. It was basically 1,200 calories with basically trace carbs.
Yeah.
Did that for 2 weeks. Did a few light cardio sessions. Like I wasn't trying to crush cardio or anything. Did normal training, and I did lose body fat. And because normally you can't really test people that frequently because you're not really going to see anything. And we actually did see a significant like drop. So we use that as like, oh shit, this actually might work. You know what I mean? So now it was hell. It wasn't like it was easy going from eating, high calorie to doing that. But it's definitely an approach that might work. So I'm excited. They basically, created different research scenarios and they settled on one of them. So they're going to be doing that hopefully as soon as possible. But yeah, so that'll be coming out soon.
Nice. Well, I guess we got everyone here. We delayed the PEC until July 10th. And as it looks now, it's either going to be Cincinnati or Nashville. That will be fine. I know. That'll be fun. Jason's like, I want to go to Nashville too. I want to do damn Cincy. I want to get out of this prison, this glass house of bullshit, but so I reached out to someone there, and she is Sally, and she works for Vent. So she's trying to find us a spot that we can have it at. And if we can't like do it somewhere there, we'll probably just bring it back to Iron House. And then we do have Denver. We are going to do that. That's October. We will be formally announcing that day too. So once we get Nashville or Cincy figured out, we're going to announce Denver. So that way you guys on the East Coast can pick if you want to go to the West Coast, or West Coast wants to go to the East Coast, or stay whatever. We were able to make that happen. The one in Denver will be at Armburst Gym, and Russ Allen will be awesome. Joining the panel and speaking with us out there since that's his home turf. So I'm real excited about that. So if you guys would like a refund, feel free to ask. No questions about it. It's Thera Brown at ironhouse615.com. Or if you guys just want to apply it to one of them, just email her too. And she handles all that for us. But otherwise, I think it was a great episode. I know we were talking about bringing Laurin back on soon to talk about PCOS, like the practicality of it. Like once you get it, what are the steps you start taking in the trenches to help people with this condition? So that was something that we said we would discuss. But Laurin, you got anything good for yourself going on the next couple, besides like locking yourself in the saran wrap and everything else weird you're doing down there?
Quarantine life. No, I'm really trying to use this time to, really serve clients and just, learn more. I'm always trying to learn more, and it does get kind of hard to learn new shit when you're really busy and you're traveling all the time. So I'm using this time to say, hey, I'm literally not allowed to travel, and I'm going to focus, all of April, because we're recording this in, last day of March, focus April on, hey, like just learning new stuff. And I've already been trying to dive into stuff, in the past 2 weeks, but just kind of continue that is really my goal. So, and if you guys don't hear from me, I'm talking to my volleyball. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, I actually see you and Jason tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock your time for that leadership thing. So how I'm doing is I'm rolling out discussing like trainer to coach, and then the second part will be production, and then the third one's practitioner. So I'm trying to give people an idea on leadership in this industry, on how you go from being like, just a basic trainer to becoming a coach, to becoming a brand, to becoming, iconic. And that's kind of what
it's actually what I've been focusing the past 2 weeks. I'm like, I really need to like sharpen those leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've been trying to focus on the past 2 weeks. So it's a really important topic. And I think it's one of the most important topics, and people often think, oh, I'm not a leader. It's like, well, you lead yourself, first of all. Even if you have 0 clients, you're still a leader to yourself. And then if you are trying to help people out, you need to know how to step up and do that. So I couldn't think of a better topic.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get into it, because that's an area that like no one really talks about in our space, because everyone's like on their own island. Fuck you, you suck, like I'm better than you and all that. And I'm kind of like, well, no, that we can have some abundance mentality here, folks, and learn and synergize with each other. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to probably do it every other week, I think, just kind of going forward. I'm doing it for free just because I want to get better at speaking, and then kind of just help everyone else out, because I know that that's something that people know I'm passionate about. So I'm excited to do it. Jason, so you guys, I can't wait either. You guys got any parting words of wisdom?
Nope. I'm done.
I'm just gonna be thinking about you guys when I'm training in my full fucking gym. Just want to let you guys.
I got a
know.
gym. I'm good tonight.
I got one too, Jeff.
Yeah, it's not the same though. I'm gonna send you pictures of my hack squat and be like, send you pictures of my leg press.
I like the hack squat though.
I make it work. I'll make it work wherever I end up. I ain't worried about it.
I know. I'm just gonna send you pictures and be like, the leg extension misses you, Jason. The tempo of 4 up.
Jason's just gonna be like leg pressing his couch with bands.
I'll do whatever I got to do. I'll come out of this, no problem.
Jason will. I mean, Laurin, I'd offered him for $2,000 that I would move out of my townhouse and he can have my townhouse and keep training down here and have a key to Iron House come and go as he wanted. But he's not desperate enough yet. But I'm hoping this goes into May and some things change for him. I might be getting a text. Hey, Jeff, Keegan need a bunk buddy? Like, packing up, head down for a week of training. So, all right. Well, you guys, it was a good time as always. Hopefully we all keep our humor during all of this because that's about all we got.
Basically. Thank you guys for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Laurin.
You guys have a good one.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.